Inshallah, we can continue on now with the second session. And the second session focuses on lesson plan, Islamization, and book publication. It's an extension, really, of our first session. Now, as I mentioned, having tried to do Islamization through the process of books, producing books themselves, and not finding supporters for it beyond those who helped in the actual production. I continued to give a series of lectures in the late 90s, early 2000s on the importance of Islamization of education in general in school, in that we needed to inculcate and include in the courses that we were studying, some things of the Quran, the Sunnah, and morality. This was like a general thought. And I discussed with a number of educators and met and had meetings in UK, in Canada, in other parts of the world, Malaysia, etc., Philippines, giving lectures on the importance of Islamization of the educational process, that we had to introduce Quran and Sunnah, because when we look at the early works of Muslim scholars in various fields, we find them speaking about surgery, and while talking about surgical instruments and the types of surgery that one could perform, etc., we find them quoting a verse from the Quran and later on quoting a relevant verse from the Sunnah. And they would just continue. It would be interwoven into the process. So I began to promote the idea that, yes, we needed to bring this into the classroom, and to do so from a relevant perspective. We're thinking about relevant. What is useful, what is beneficial? Because, we have a history of using the Quran ceremoniously. We have somebody recite the Quran, usually when we're beginning many gatherings, etc. We'll have somebody come up there, recite, young, old, whatever, beautiful recitations, etc. People enjoy it, etc. But it always bothered me that all the people who were listening didn't understand a word that the Quran was saying. I had learned Arabic, so okay, I understood. Those verses of the Quran had meaning to me, but for everybody else in the room, or almost everybody else, or in the hall or whatever, they didn't understand a word of what that person recited. So the recitation became a substitute for musical entertainment. And I spoke out against this. Many gatherings I went to, schools, institutions, etc., I would advise the people, the organizers, etc., please do not read the Quran without reading the translation. At least read the Quran, read the translation along with it, so people can understand the message. Allah warns us in the Quran. So many places. أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ. Will they not reflect on the meanings of the Quran? أَمْ عَلَى قُلُوبٍ أَقْفَالُهَا. Or are their hearts locked up? Is the big question mark which Allah raises. The importance of tadabbur, of reflection, of understanding, being critical. And then the other aspect was relevant verses. We're giving a talk on youth, and the verse which is recited is about jihad. There's no connection between the two. Or it's about paradise. Now, these are all useful verses, beneficial verses. But surely the Quran was revealed for implementation. Many of the verses were revealed to deal with particular instances which were happening in the time of the Prophet ﷺ. There were asbabun nuzul, reasons for which these verses were revealed. So I used to strongly stress this to people, that please try to choose verses that relate to whatever the topic is that you are going to deliver, the conference, what the conference is about. Get verses that relate to it, because for sure the Quran has verses which relate to it. The Quran covers everything. So that's the way we should be using it. At this time, while promoting this idea, talking with different teachers, administrators, etc., an idea of another approach to Islamization started to develop. I saw a problem with the textbooks which I was trying to develop, because some countries, they have their own set of English textbooks which must be used in the school. So my textbooks, the ones which I had developed, couldn't be used. They could be used as supplementary texts, but they couldn't be used as primary texts. So though the students would have this other Islamic reading they could do, they still had to read the secular texts. There's no way around it. So in my mind, I started to see that this was not a solution in and of itself. It was important. Effort should continue to be made in that area, but it was not the solution. While talking to teachers, it became more and more clear to me that the place where Islamization could most conveniently take place in a way that is applicable for all circumstances, regardless of the governmental policies which govern how education is delivered, prescribing texts, etc., that had to be read. What I found was that the best approach was through the lesson plan itself. It went back to the teacher, that teacher. I realized that it had to take place in the lesson plan themselves. Because it wasn't enough just to have Muslim teachers. Because I remember speaking with one of the imams of one of the communities in the States, when I was setting up the Islamic Online University, I had spoken to them about the possibilities of students studying online with my university while being in the States without having to go anywhere, etc., the advantages, etc., etc. But I was told, quite frankly, by the Imam, that none of the students were interested in doing Islamic studies. I was shocked. But your school is all Muslim, no non-Muslim students. All teachers were Muslim teachers. Administrators were Muslim administrators. And yet, students graduating had no desire to go to Islamic studies? How is that? The teachers were Muslims. Many of them were convert Muslims, very active and engaging the students in Islamic discussions and things like that. What I came to realize is that the textbooks that they were studying were secular textbooks, the regular textbooks everybody else was studying, and the messages, the subliminal messages which were being given through those textbooks were reaching the children. So the student who graduates, what do you want to be? I want to be a lawyer. Why do you want to be a lawyer? Lawyers make good money. What do you want to be? A doctor. Why do you want to be a doctor? Because doctors make good money. And so on and so forth. That the Western secularized texts, which were preparing people to become components of that civilization, which was primarily a dunyawi civilization, a secular civilization focused on wealth, accumulation of wealth. So this was affecting the students in spite of the efforts of the teachers. So I realized that the efforts had to be united. There had to be some system. It had to be systematic and consistent. Because you may have a very nice teacher one year, and the next teacher, that year teacher has a baby, goes home, is not teaching anymore. Some other teacher comes back to replace her or him, her, obviously if it's having a baby, but having, a new teacher who doesn't have the same spirit. So she doesn't make the same kind of effort. The Islamization of the class is minimized. There needed to be some way to keep this focused and have the Islamic values, concepts, culture infused into the education system systematically in an organized way. So what I came to understand after discussing at length with teachers, that where, as they say, the rubber hits the road, where you make or break your Islamic school is in the lesson plans. This is the main weapon of the teacher. That those lesson plans, if they were Islamized, then whatever was being taught was Islamized. So this was critical. This was the key. So I began to look into lesson plans more, how they were set up with their objectives and materials used and systems. Of course, you had many different forms in which lesson plans were written, but in general, lesson plans, outline what the teacher is going to do in that particular class. So if this contained Islamic direction, how to make sure that that class was Islamic, then we could Islamize all of our subjects. And it didn't matter what textbook you were using. So if you're in India studying whatever stories which may be from Hinduism, Hindu mythology, etc., you could still Islamize it. You could still give the students the Islamic view while teaching the material that was presented to you. So this became my focus. And over the next 3 years, I developed a 5-principle program for Islamization. In the meantime, the books which were produced for the English series contained some of the ideas, I mean, because I could say that the Islamization approach was also extracted from what came before. It's not separate from. It just now became more structured and organized. If we move on to the next series of slides, I concluded that using the lesson plans, we could develop new texts or supplementary texts or manuals for those who were forced to use texts which were prescribed by the government organization or whatever. And I basically identified a 3-year plan in which to produce the alternative texts. At the end of the first year, where people prepared their lesson plans, we said that the teachers from each grade and subject would choose the best lesson plans, you know, sifting through the various classes and what techniques they developed to handle them. This, at the end of the school year, we could, each of the schools, those of you that are participating with us now, could develop a basic standard teacher's manual for your school, for your own school, based on whatever syllabus, etc. you're using. Now, if that manual is uploaded to our site, our website for homeschooling, IIOHS, the Islamic International Online Homeschool website, then the committee, which I have set up and hope to increase in participants, could review those lesson plans, and from them, from all the various schools, create a master plan which would encompass all of the various new and innovative information which the various schools had produced. Some schools may be stronger in lower grades and upper grades, some may be stronger in upper grades and lower grades, whatever. You know, you're going to have a variety of strengths and weaknesses. But now when we globalize it, then it's possible to take from all the various schools around the world and put together a plan containing the best of the best. So following that, move on to the next next slide. We should be able now to hand in a globalized text which the various schools could now implement and further improve, or at the same time they could be used to start preparing material for textbooks. Or we could wait. We could start from the second year, or we could wait until the third year. Could you move on to the third? Next slide, please. So by the third year, we could be developing alternative texts. You know, after the revision, application and revision of the standardized global lesson plans, we could then work towards the developing of alternative texts. And just to give you an example, because you heard me speak about the Iman reading series, English reading series, I'm going to now show you one of the books and see how the material has been Islamized. One of the books, which is a level 3 book, book 4 for children 7+, around the age of 7. Level 3 is basically grade 2. So this book was entitled Trips to Remember. And it had inside of it a series of stories. Among the stories, but this is one, which was also used for the cover, At the Beach. And, it's a story there about Muhammad and Fatima, kids who went with their mother and dad to the beach, and what happens at the beach. They're building sand castles. Move on to the next slide, please. And while they're building the sand castles, a dog runs after a frisbee, which was thrown, and he knocked the kids, and they fell and smashed their sandcastle. So what happened, move on to the next page. The kids were upset, and they started throwing stones at the dog, calling him a bad dog, etc. Then, okay, this is a common incident that could happen. And Muslims have attitudes to dogs anyway. So the mother and the father, seeing them doing that, stopped them, told them not to throw stones at the dog. And really, they're told not to throw stones at any animal because we are forbidden to harm the animals. The kids, of course, question, but the dog ruined their sandcastle. But the mother explains, don't worry about it, you can rebuild it, etc. Go on. Next slide. So the parents go on to explain some hadiths of the Prophet ﷺ concerning animals. As they're sitting there, they're eating, they say Bismillah before they eat. And the kids ask about the natural question. Okay, if we're not supposed to throw stones at animals, to hurt them, what about the sandwiches they're eating, which had beef in it? It's an animal also. So then it's explained about animals which you can eat and animals which you can't, which are halal and haram. But still focusing on the fact that we shouldn't harm animals in general. So anyway, they went back and they saw the dog again. Flip over, next page, 2 pages. And they gave the dog scraps of food, which was left over from their meal, and the Prophet ﷺ was quoted there by the mother who spoke about the reward for feeding animals, being kind to animals. And the kids decided to go back digging and creating new sandcastles, which were going to be even bigger than the early one. So that's just a story of kids at the beach with their parents. Now in that story, there's so many things that happen there. There's so much knowledge being imparted to the children. There are lessons, Islamic lessons. There's Islamic morals that are going on there. There are hadiths which are quoted of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. There's so many different things which are happening in the story. And so when we're talking about creating alternative texts, this is what we're talking about, this type of thing, where we're bringing morality back into the classroom. The stories which are being used, much of the early grades are taught in the story fashion. This is a fictional story, it's not a true story. A person asked about fiction. So this story is used now to educate the children by including Islamic principles in it. And at the same time, while doing so, we have also made the topic, or whatever we were taking, made that topic interesting to the children, and at the same time the children realize and understand that Islam has a role to play in all of this. So the route was that of focusing on the lesson plans themselves. And as I said, in the early stages, the early 2000s, I gave these series of lectures in different parts of the Muslim world, Muslim communities, encouraging the Islamization of lesson plans, focusing on the morality, Quran and Hadith. From that period, I came to, when I started to look at the material which had been developed for Islamization of schools in general, I came to realize that there were some other areas that also were critical in that educational process, Islamization process. And they had to do with the environment in which the various schools functioned, the environment of the school itself. I mean, after looking at issues concerning the administration, because of course, for an Islamic school to be successful, it does need to have its top administrators committed to this process of Islamization. It's not enough that business people set up a school because they see this is a need in the Muslim community. So it is set up as a business to earn money. Because when that is the approach, when they take that approach, then they will cut corners. They will get the cheapest teachers they can get, usually not very well qualified. And, the circumstances of the school will be run down, etc. The administrators, maybe non-Muslims, etc. Their concern is just to get the school running. Provide this Islamic school when the people had none, and earn, good profits in the process. However, the view of the administrator should be that they are serving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by providing this service to the Muslim community. That they're trying to uplift the community, to provide an alternative to the non-Islamic schools in the society. This should be the goal. So they're not going to cut corners. They should be far away from cutting corners. In fact, they should overspend to ensure the quality of those that they're bringing on board. So very, very important. Similarly, the administrators, the principal, the head teachers, etc., they have to also share in this vision, in this mission. They have to have this kind of commitment themselves. Otherwise, again, though the founder may have had this vision and love, etc., the administrators can kill the school also by themselves being financially motivated, simply doing the job which makes the money the quickest and the easiest, and the spirit for Islamization of the school can easily be lost. So the administrators who run the school have to also share the vision. And then the teachers themselves. We have to be careful about the teachers that we choose. We should try to make sure that they're as Islamic as possible, have even courses throughout the year to upgrade their standard of Islamic knowledge, Islamic consciousness. And I would add that they need to be a part of this Islamization process, where they're actively engaged in bringing Islam into each and every class that they're teaching, and to do so in a systematic way. And that's what this program is about. And of course, even the students themselves. The students themselves need to be Islamic. Because as the computer people say, garbage in, garbage out. If you're bringing garbage into the school, then don't expect anything to come out but garbage. And that's why the school administrators and the teachers and etc., faculty, etc., have to be selective in terms of who they bring into the school. It's not just a question of numbers. If we have 1,000 students, we're going to make this much money. We have 500 students, we're not going to make as much money. So we try to get 1,000 in. Compromising, we don't care. As long as you're ready to pay the fees, you're in. Naturally, such a school with this hodgepodge mix of kids coming out of homes where people are very, very un-Islamic, trying to run an Islamic school along with children who are more Islamic, it's a mess. You're fighting a losing battle. And that's why some of the best Islamic schools that I know are very selective about who they bring on board. They interview parents, make sure that the parents are themselves committed to the same ideals and goals which the school has chosen for itself. So really, it's on all of these levels that a clear Islamic direction has to be established in order for the Islamization of the institution to truly take place. The lesson plan is the tool or the weapon of the teacher who is on the front lines. They are the ones who are meeting the ignorance, removing it, educating, and building. So they're right in the front lines, and their main weapon is the lesson plan. And we'll be looking at that. But the lesson plan alone, without the other elements in place, will not do the job either. So though I'm pushing and I'm very much convinced that the lesson plan is the solution, this is because most of the schools that I've met, that I've visited, etc., they are conscious of the other needs, so that I've met schools where even the cleaners dressed Islamically and were a part of the Islamic process of the schools. If they saw things going wrong in the school, they would tell their superiors, tell the administration. They felt they had a stake in the success of the school. And that's what you want. Everybody, right down to the cleaners, those who clean up the school, etc., they should share in this mission and vision. With that kind of cooperation, support, then it is feasible, it is conceivable and feasible that we can achieve Islamization of our educational institution. But as I said, we have to work to make sure that these things are in place. All of these people, human resources that are out there, they all have a role to play. And if they're not playing it, then they're undermining whatever efforts that you may be trying to do. You have to have that support across the board. So even though people might cry and say, how can you deny those parents to put their children in your school? Yes, they're not good parents. Yes, they're watching television all the time in their homes, and they're watching corruption, and their kids are, crazy, they're bad-mannered, but your school can save them. So why deny them a place? Well, the principle in Islam is that where the harm from anything is greater than its good, then you avoid that thing. It's a general principle. When the harm is greater than its good, because in everything there is some good. But when the harm is greater than the good, we avoid it. So if we're going to be struggling to raise these kids and then we put this bomb in their midst, who is just spewing evil, is just undermining everything that you're doing, then you have to say, we have to cut our losses here. It's better that he be denied. Of course, it's not a good thing. We can say in general, everybody should have that opportunity. We shouldn't deny that child a chance. But if in giving him that chance, we're going to ruin what is going on for the majority of the other students, then we have to say we deny him that chance for the sake of the general good of the rest of the students. These are considerations that we have to keep in mind. So, what we have looked at basically is where we need to be in lesson plan Islamization. I explained how we got there. There are some schools that I've met. I met in Pakistan, very nice Islamic schools, who are in the process of trying to make their own books. They felt this is the solution. They just had to create their own books, and they're struggling with it. Huge struggle. But it's a huge challenge. They don't have professional publishers and professional people to do all the necessary editing and all. So it's a big, big struggle they're engaged in. And in the end, as I told the owner, if you do produce this nice set of books, there are many countries in the Muslim world that can't use them because they have their own texts which they insist on using. So your text cannot be used there. They may get them for supplementary reading, Islamic exposure, but they cannot replace the text which they have. So it's limited to only that school or that area or that country, whatever. So I stress to them the importance of developing a global strategy. We have to act locally because we have to deal with where we are. But our view, our ideas should be global. How the Ummah can best benefit. And as I said, I believe that benefit for Islamic schools is going to come through the channel of Islamization of lesson plans. Do we follow the rationalist approach or orthodox approach in Islamizing of science? Because certain orthodox understanding goes against the established sciences. Well, rationalist and orthodox, these terms may be clear or may be unclear. I would say that our approach should be orthodox in the sense that the Quran and the Sunnah we believe, but rationalist in the sense that we try to understand the Quran and the Sunnah in the context of what information we have acquired. Usually the area of conflict ends up in the area of theories, not in the area of facts, where we don't have evidence that such and such an issue is incorrect, but we believe that it is incorrect based on certain other information that we have. So, the fact that you're dealing with a belief and not a fact, then there's no problem in sticking with the Quranic facts as we best understand them and deal with rationalist theories as theories. My background is one of biochemistry, and I've run into different areas of so-called facts, scientific facts, etc., which may appear on the surface, if one hasn't really understood everything that's involved in it, to contradict the revealed knowledge that we have, that you call the orthodox. But in the long run, I have seen that, from my experience, is that mostly the issues, are not around the facts themselves. They're around the interpretation of the facts. And interpretations are beliefs, ideas, which change. One year they may hold one idea, and then another year they may change the idea. As more and more information comes, ideas change. There's so much change that's taking place. So I don't think there is really a problem. If you have a particular problem that you would like to discuss when we're going into our practical lesson plan sessions, then I would suggest that you bring those problems then, and we can look at them individually and come to some conclusion as to how we would handle it within this context. But, the classical scholars had always said that there is no contradiction between true science and revelation. There shouldn't be. Because if it all came from Allah and it's true knowledge, then there shouldn't be a conflict. The conflict comes in the area of theories. Theories based on beliefs. Because, don't be fooled into thinking that these people are so rational. These are the rationalists. They're not necessarily rationalists. They have their own orthodoxy. Their belief that life came about by accident is a belief. It's a huge belief. An accident, other things that have come about, they have been able to reproduce the circumstances and produce similar results, because that's when we know this is the fact. It's not it's not an accidental thing that took place, but it's a fact, because you can repeat this process a number of times. That confirms that this is really a fact. But in the attempts that have happened over the last century, people have been trying to produce life. You had Frankenstein. Frankenstein's the idea again. You hook up this guy you put together with bits and pieces, hook him up to lightning bolt, and he comes alive. Life comes back into him. A dead body made up of bits and pieces. The same idea is at the back of that. But reality is that they cannot produce a single living being, no matter how small it might be. And it's what Allah challenges them, that the fly, which you've considered to be so despicable, it is something you're smashing, you're swatting, you're spraying, you can't make a fly. You cannot make a fly, much less a cell, even a cell. A living cell you cannot create. Take the chemicals. You know exactly what the cell wall consists of. You know what the cytoplasm inside the cell consists of. You know the bodies that make it up, whether it's the mitochondria or whatever else. You know the nucleus, and you know the RNA and the DNA, and you know all of this stuff. And you have the chemicals, you know the composition, complete composition. But you cannot take those chemicals and make it. And you have been trying. I've been talking about the atheist scientists. I've been trying for 100 years, and they will never do it. because you cannot create life. So all of the areas of conflict that develops later on in Darwinian theories and arguments, etc., when you take it down to the core is their belief, and they believe, as they say, if you put 100 monkeys in a cage, give them 100 typewriters, give them Arabic typewriters, and enough paper, one of those monkeys, while jumping up and down on the keys, is going to type out for you a complete Quran, from Fatiha to Nas, the whole thing. They believe that is possible. That's why we say that's a belief. That is actually an irrational belief. We have never seen anything of the like in the real world. Creation, meaningful activity, producing something, we see this all the time around us. We do it ourselves. So the belief in a creator is based on fact. Their belief in there not being any creator is irrational, not based on any facts. I work in a Catholic school with non-Muslims. How can I Islamize my lessons? Well, you're in a Catholic school. What you need to be in is a Muslim school. It's simple as that. To talk about Islamizing your lessons in a Catholic school, it's just not common sense. That's not rational. You're in a Catholic school, they have their own agenda, and you don't have any choice on the matter. Maybe if they hear you trying to mention Islam in your classes, etc., you'll be fired. You'll be out of there in no time. Anyway, as a trained teacher, my advice is you should be in a Muslim school. Go find a Muslim school and benefit Muslims with the knowledge that Allah has given you of education. That would be my advice to you. As for developing the master plans, does it require teachers with certificates or any experienced teacher who doesn't have documents? Yes, the master plan, lesson plans, don't require teachers with certificates. Teachers with certificates are good, are better. They have training. They'll be able to give greater input. But those with big experience, long time teaching experience, who have over the years learned all of the tricks of the trade, as they say, then they may sometimes be even better than the trained or so-called certified teacher. In any case, it is a global effort involving everybody who has teaching skills and something to offer in this area. So we're not closing doors. Our committee so far, it has some people who are trained teachers and others who are not. So it's open to both. And at the end of the course, as I said, you'll be given the contacts for those who would like to participate in extending the Islamization of lesson plans to their own institutions. If they would like to join with us in a global collaboration to produce those master lesson plans that may be used globally, inshallah.